One of the attributes we are now convinced it has is a defense mechanism called InfraSound.
InfraSound? Well, that was when Dean's from Oregon, he and I went out wood knocking. It was about 11 o'clock at night. And the previous weekend, we'd had wood knocking experience a few miles from here.
A year and a half ago, I would have called you a liar. I'd say it's bullshit. I read reports where people will be walking in the woods, they hear something in the tree line, they might have a sighting, they have this symptom, an overwhelming sense of fear, dread, scared out of their wits. They would get nosebleeds, they would get dizzy spells, and a lot of people were saying that Bigfoot emits infrasound, much like an elephant does when they communicate, and other animals actually use infrasound to communicate. We think it uses it as a defense mechanism.
So we headed out. We went down a trail there from Postcard and grabbed a baseball bat. I gave 3 good knocks on the tree, and we're waiting, listening for a reply. We hear something out in the brush, and I thought, it might be an elk or something. And Dean says, "Do you hear that?" And I go, "Hear what? I work in a factory."
Well, it was pretty much a full moon, so the moonlight was bouncing off the river, so there was a little bit of ambient light. And Steve stayed in camp, and he was kind of watching down towards the river. He couldn't see much because it was dark. He could see a little bit of movement. He could see John and Dean walking down towards the area. And he actually had his night vision binocular out for a while, and he put it down, I suppose. They got down there and started doing some wood knocking. They were hearing things moving in the woods. John says he heard something move through the woods from point A to point B, from what he can recollect so fast no human could possibly do it.
He got the feeling, really strong feeling. He says, "We need to go. We don't belong here. We need to go now." And I'm going, oh great. Now he's getting all creeped out and scared.
He didn't want to admit to John that he was scared, but it was not a normal fear. He was nauseous. He was panicked.
We were standing here in the dark, and Risky was telling us what he'd seen. A figure step out behind us and run past us in the darkness and disappear into the shadow of the trees in the moonlight. So we're back here looking and just kind of talking about the situation and what had happened. Dean was standing right here, which is kind of a natural funnel shape in these cement blocks. Dean put his head down and said he's feeling nauseous, and then kind of stepped back and fell right over backwards into these blackberries and stickers. And Steve said, man down, and that's when I realized whatever was affecting Dean was being generated by a Bigfoot back in the trees right there.
He describes what it sounds like, a very low bass drum sound. Like boom, 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 boom.
So I walked around into that block right there, and it was just like wading into the surf. I mean, just waves were hitting me, only they weren't water waves, they were like energy waves. All the hair on my body was standing up, and it was going like waves. It was just woo, woo.
We don't know how they do it. We think it comes from the vocal cords, almost like a growl that is below the human hearing range.
And I went up and I walked all the way up there to the first tree and whacked it with a baseball bat, and the sensation stopped instantly.
So now we're firm believers. They got zapped with infrasound, and I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or Bigfoot is communicating with another Bigfoot using infrasound, and that's just the byproduct of its communication. But I do think it's a defense mechanism. They use it, and that's how they scare people off. They don't want a confrontation with humans. If they don't want you there, they just want you to leave, and that's one way that they do it. We are absolutely convinced. We went from calling absolute bullshit to absolutely convinced it is a true trait of a Bigfoot. And I don't think they use it all the time. I think they use it as a last resort. Maybe you're a little bit too close to the youngsters. Maybe you're a little bit too close for comfort, or maybe they're just pissed off because you're wood knocking, trying to pretend you're a Bigfoot, and all of a sudden I come and I find a couple of humans pounding on trees, and I'm pissed. So we don't know. But that was the InfraSound incident last year.